Welcome back. This is Dan Havey with CF Ninja Hacks, and today in this video here we are going to go over mobile optimizing your site or getting it ready for any kind of mobile devices. And what you see here in front of you is the Launch Boss template inside of ClickFunnels 2.0, and I wanted to use a template that you could go into and see, because it's going to be in everybody's site, a template you guys can go into, take a look at this thing, and then be able to duplicate what I'm doing and be able to practice with it a little bit. So let's just take a quick look at what this site is made up of. And so we have a universal section all the way up here at the top. Then we have another section right here. The row is the exact same size as the section, so it's showing up as blue, not as green. Then down here we have another section with a row right here, and in fact this row is actually made up of a flex container, and it has I was expecting here to have a top margin that was a negative top margin, but we're going to have to see exactly how it was that they pushed that up there then as we go along. Then we got a 6-column row right here, regular singular column row, a 2-column row, and this is all one big section right here coming down. We got another section, and then this one down here, and a little bit more, and then everything below this is blog posts and product offerings and stuff like that. So we're not going to worry about that stuff at the bottom as far as mobile optimizing it. That kind of stuff's for a different lesson. And so let's take a look at what we have here. And the best thing that they did, well, they did a lot of really great things in 2.0. Well, one of the best things that they did is this layout guide up here at the top. And you're going to see how it kind of comes down and steps back and forth and in and out and all that. This, if you were doing any kind of programming, doing HTML, doing JavaScript, anything like this, we would refer to this as the DOM, or the structure of the DOM. And you see, like I said, it goes in and out, but it's made up of your sections, and then inside of that, of course, is your rows, your columns, and then your elements down in the very inner part of it. And so they just weave it in and out like that, like kind of like a table of contents in a book. And it just gives you a visual structure of what all of the elements in the page looks like. So as we come down here, so we show our top section right there, and then we have a row inside of here that when I highlight over it, we don't get anything. So why is that? Well, the reason why is if you come over here and you look on the right-hand side, you're going to see that we have these two little icons. So the one on the left is, of course, for your desktop. The one on the right is for your mobile. And neither of them are turned on. So let's just turn this on for a second, and we're going to see that we have this, what amounts to, I guess it's just, multiple column row in here. And I suspect that when they were first building out this page, they built this in here because they didn't have the universal sections ready yet or anything, and they never took it out. They just forgot it in there. So I just want to point that out to you, that that should be turned off, because frankly you can just delete that entire row right out of there because you don't need it for the page. But then we come down here to this next row, which is on the page, and you see that this one here is set to desktop only, and the one below it is set to nothing. Well, actually it's set to mobile only. That mobile is so faint you can barely see it sometimes, but it is set to mobile only. So let's turn it on to desktop, and you're going to see here now, let's close that back out. Now we have a second row that just popped in right here because I turned it on in desktop. And what you're going to notice about this row is it doesn't have any background image behind it. So I can even go into the row, and we're going to see the background is not even turned on. There's nothing in there. It's not turned on, so therefore you wouldn't see anything anyway. But what they did is they took the headline and the subheadline and the button, and they duplicated them down here into this mobile only row. And they had to do that because they got this big ginormous image up here. And let's just look at that. We can come in here and we got this big image of these two young ladies and a couple of other highlighted, round ball kind of looking things in there, whatever you want to call that. So we got our circles up here and down here, and then we have these two. And now generally when you go then to mobile And of course, you smush everything together, they're going to be probably like really tiny on the screen, and then also they're probably going to be right behind the print or the button or something else. So generally speaking, when you're going from mobile, or you're going from desktop to mobile, you generally speaking remove any kind of background images. But then when we go into mobile, you're going to see there's a big round circle right there. Well, where is that one coming from? And where that coming from actually is, we'll go into the layout here because I can't get to that. That is actually coming from this section right here. And let me copy that, and we will put that in. And let's give it a second to run up. So now you see this big circular thing right there. And in here, they actually have this set so that it's in the bottom right-hand corner. You could set it in other places, and if you did, then it would be other. Well, let's just try this here. We put it in the upper right-hand corner. And I didn't mention this before. I just went up here and clicked on it. This is how you go back and forth very quickly between your desktop and your mobile. So we're going to go to mobile now. And so it appears though it's up higher than it had been. It's still kind of over to the left-hand side, but it's up higher. But now let's go back into our layout. Let's go into our section, and let's move it back down to the bottom left. And so it did move it down and over towards the center. If we move it to the bottom right, moves it all the way over to the left-hand side. So we'll put it back right where they had it. So now let's go back into our desktop view, and we'll close this off. And so another thing to notice here is they went full width on this row here. They set this to 100% on the width. And then this other one, because they didn't need to go there, they just left this at the default, which the default width is always 1170 pixels. They could have made it wider. They could have made it 100%, but there was no reason to change it because it wouldn't have changed anything. So that's just these first two rows right here. So now let's go into the, let's just go back into the mobile view, and we're going to take a look at this, and we're going to say, okay, what don't we like about this? Well, first off, this headline here is basically the headline for the entirety of your workspace, your hub, your blog, however you want to look at it. If somebody goes to just the subdomain, which is really the root of the page, the main URL for the page, they're going to end up on this page right here, and they're going to see this Launch Boss, and that's kind of a small headline. I'd like to see something much bigger in there, especially font-wise. So let's just see what we can do to change the font. Now, if we come down here and we look at and what I did is I clicked on override here, and I opened this up. And we come down here and we have our font size for our, just says font size or the mobile font size. And so desktop and mobile. And right now it is turned on to rems. And what a rem is, just watch my video on what a rem is. But it's very simple. We got 1.25 rem right here. So that would be 1.25 times the root font size of this page. So we can find our root font size by going to edit style, and right here it is set at 16 pixels. Now I always recommend to set that at 10 pixels so it makes for very simple math, because if that was set at 10 pixels and you made it 1.5 rem, 1.5 times 10 is 15 pixels, makes the math way easier. But 1.25 times 16 should be 20 pixels, and we'll turn this on and it shows 21 pixels, so there must have been something to the right of that 5. So we got 21 pixels. Well, obviously that's too small, so let's make this a little bit bigger, and let's just say we want it at 46. So we'll leave that there at 46, and let's see what the was for desktop here. It is set actually at 43. Now we can also come in here, we can change the subheadline, and do we want to make it any bigger? What do we want to do? Well, in this case here, let's just turn this on to pixels so it's a little easier to tell what we're doing. And we can make it a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit smaller. But for me on mobile, I don't ever really like to go past 3 3 lines of text if at all possible. And the other thing I don't like to do is leave an orphaned word like this. Now, in this case here, it does meet my rule where I like to have it kind of be V-shaped going down. So I always like the bottom line to be smaller than the lines above it whenever possible, but I have an orphan word. But so it doesn't look bad in this case here. Let's just see if we take this down 1 notch, what we'll get down to. And I see for some reason it's populating a phone number in there. So let's just make this 19. Let me tab out of here. Something got all messed up there. So 19. But again, I'm not a huge fan about how that's looking. So you got to kind of got to have a little bit of a give and take there. Do we want to have the orphaned word at the bottom and have it give us that V shape downward, drawing the eye downward? I think at this point here, I'm going to leave it looking like that. So that's all we need to do on this top part here. Now, let's say, though, you wanted to change this and you wanted this to be, let's say we wanted this to be a much darker font, much heavier font, I should say. We would then, in that case, we would have to clone this element. And so you would clone this element and you would say this one here, we want this one to be desktop only, and the other one, we want that to be mobile only. So we'll leave the desktop alone and we'll go back into our mobile, and then we can change anything we want in here, because until you clone that, we can't really change the font family, we can't change the font weight without it changing both of those elements. So now we could say, all right, now we want this one to be bold, and we could even come in and change the font family if we wanted to. And again, there's no reason why you can't do that. There's no reason why you wouldn't do that, because very, very, very rarely will somebody be looking at the desktop and the mobile version simultaneously and going, oh, how come the font sizes don't match up? You know, people just don't do that. We know that. So just wanted to show you really quickly how you would have to do that if you wanted to change basically anything in this element other than what the mobile versus desktop font sizes were. If you want to make any other changes, you do have to duplicate the element. So there's really nothing else to look at there, and we can come back into our layout and we can turn off the desktop version of that. And as soon as it was a mobile only version, it kicked me into the mobile view. Now for this next section here, I just want to look at something in here real quick, because I'm looking at this flex container, and we don't have any top negative margin. So what is it that is pulling all this up? And let me see if I can, let me get into this element right here, and that doesn't have any negative top margin. And let's do the subheadline element. That doesn't have any negative top margin. So I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't know why this is proud of this. When I originally hacked this earlier today, and then I'm editing the video, and I found that basically 3/4 of the video did not get recorded because I'm having really bad internet problems. And when I did the original, this was set up as an actual row, not as a flex container. Now it's set up as a flex container, and I use flex containers all the time in 1.0. You had to do it with CSS in order to make it work. So they built it in here, and I thought that was really cool, but I don't know why this has no negative top margin. Now, let me just try this. So that's that. So maybe let's go check this. Now, there wouldn't be a column in here. There's not a column in there. So let's go into the layout. And let's see what that was. So as I was moving out of there, I kind of noticed something. Let's go into this section, row right there. And there you go. That's only -5. That's not going to do much for us. So let's, again, let's go back into this element, and we go up here to our breadcrumbs as well. So we're going to come to our column. That doesn't have any negative top margin. We have the row has -5. Wow. That's much more than -5, so that explains it. So there's something here wonky with that, with the top margin on this row, because as you see here, it's moving it probably 50 pixels just by having this be -5. So that would make a lot more sense. So, and then the rest of the row is set at 50%, so that'd be 50% of the width of the section. So, okay, we solved that mystery at least. So that actually is a little bit of an error, a little bug going on in here. But how a flex container works, that's what we really need to get to here, is anything you put inside of this flex container is going to basically, as it's called, it's going to flex it. Because normally you have what is known as a CSS box model. And so CSS box model is what you basically saw here and what you've seen everywhere else in all of my training and in HTML in general, is you have your section, and then inside of that, so the section's a box on the outside, then inside of that you have a row, another box, and inside of that you have columns, boxes. Inside the columns you have your elements, more boxes. So boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes. Here what we have is known as Flexbox. So it's the CSS Flexbox model instead of the CSS box model. And basically what it says is this whole idea of we're going to do box inside a box inside a box gets turned on its head, and you have the ability to much more readily move the boxes how you want them to be. And so how they built this is you have your flex container, and then inside of the flex container they dropped in these two elements. So let me just show you how we would do that. So we're going to add another flex container, and so if you can't find it, just come in here, type in flex, and there we go. We just dropped in a flex container. Now again, we're still inside of that row. That row had a white background on it. Now inside of here, the way they did this, they put in an image, and then also we want to put in another element, and we're going to put in this, let's put in a sub headline element. Now you see what it did is it put them side by side. So now let's go into our editor here. Let's just find an image real quick that we can drop in here on the left. And because my internet is so messed up today, let's not do that. Let us just come up to this element up here, if I can get a hold of it. And so here's the element, and it's not going to let me get to it, is it? Man, okay, let's try a different one here. Let's just try this icon element down here. We will clone this, and we will move this up into here, and now we will delete this one out. Okay, so now we have our icon element, which is small, much smaller than our image, but you'll get the idea here. And then we have our text element. Now you're saying to yourself, okay, why are they side by side? Normally you drop one element in and then you drop another element in, and they would be one on top of the other, because inside of Flex you can tell it what direction you want it to go. And I have a lot more training on Flex, so I'm just going to go through this all very quickly. But right now we have what is the default, which is to go from left to right. But we could also say, let's put them top to bottom. Now in this case here, it caused this image to go over to the left, but that was something we could correct if need be. We can also tell it to go in the opposite directions here as well. But like I said, there is more Flex training available. So that's the simple way of how you do this. You can put elements inside of Flex containers, or you can put Flex containers inside of Flex containers, which frankly is the way that I prefer to do it. I would put in two Flex containers, one containing the image, one containing the text. But again, that's for another training. Here we're looking at how are we going to now mobile optimize this, because we have these now two side by each like this, and it looks good. And the reason why this looks good and the reason why this is centered here is not because it has a whole bunch of top margin on it. The reason why it's centered, again, is a function of Flex, which once you put something inside of a Flex container, you can then say, okay, where do we want it to align? And you can align it to the top, you can align it to the center where it was, you can align it to the bottom. This one I think is, okay, I was going to say I thought that was baseline, but I guess not. And then here we have stretch, which is actually the default, but that would not come into play in a situation like this. So we are going to put it back in the middle. So now no matter what, it's going to be perfectly lined up in the center. And then let's check this element here. This one is also set to be in the center. And if I change it, it doesn't really matter, because this this element right here, this image element, also, okay, it's not floated to the left. I was going to say I thought it would be floated to the left, but it is taking up the whole width here. You see, it is a block level element at this point, so it's taking up the entirety of this area, which is again why I would use flex containers inside of flex containers to hold the elements in order to be able to maintain their shape and size. But again, we're dealing with what we have here. So now let's go into the mobile view, and we see what happens now when we go mobile is it puts them side by each like this. Now, frankly, for me, I don't like that because the text is going to get really small, the image is going to get really small, so I'm not actually a huge fan of the way they did this. So what I would like to see, and I'll do it over here in the desktop, I would like to see, well, actually I can't now I think about it, when they go to mobile, what I would like to see here is, let's get out to the Flexbox. Sometimes it's really hard to get into these things. What I would like to see here is to have them stack one on top of each other. Okay, so here we are now stacked, and what I would do then on mobile is, now that I think about it, we probably have to clone this element because I'd want to push this element up. Just like you see down here at the bottom, you have these, you have the text with the image pushed up above it, and I think this is a really good look here where they then cross back over the one above it. I think that's a good look, and I'll show you what it looks like on desktop. So you have this, but then natively inside of ClickFunnels, it's going to take those different columns and it's going to stack them one on top of each other. That's how it's going to be. Obviously, the one on the left is always going to be on top and then down the way. And so on the mobile, I think that looks really nice like that. And so I'd like to do that exact same thing up here. So the question becomes, how are we going to do that? And I don't think, well, let's just play around with this a little bit here. So we are inside the Flex container. Let's do this. Let's take just the image element and see, I can't change, see, I can only change where it's going to go left and right now. Now, did you notice that is that as we changed this from being, let's go here, no, let's go to this element right there. Here, we're showing the aligned self top to bottom, and they are aligned left to right, okay? Now when we go into the mobile, because I changed the orientation of this, let's go back in here. Instead of being, nope, wrong one, I'm in the container. I wanted to be inside of the image. Instead of being top to bottom, now it's left to right. So it always switches. When we switch the direction of the how it's going to flex, we changed it from being horizontal to going up and down. It will also flip the aligned self from being one to the other. And so just be aware of that. It'll flip-flop them in the opposite direction, essentially. So how are we going to get this thing up above the top? So let's come into the element here and let us give it a bunch of negative. Woo, we're way out of there. So yeah, there's something a little janky about this today. So now we gave that minus 35 pixels, but now let's go back into here and it's up proud like that. That kind of looks a little bit funny. So let's do this. Let us, it's going to be tough to work on this element. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to clone this thing or not. Let me see. What do I got to do? Let me go back into it and let's, and I'm purposely leaving all this in here just so you can see sometimes. Let's take this element out of here. Let's just move that up there. Let's see if that helps us out. Can I see? As soon as I move outside of here, yeah, I'm having problems. So let's take this element out of here as well. Now let's clone it. And then we're going to, let's see if I can put both of them back down. Oops. Let's see if I can put both of them back down inside of my Flex container. Am I inside the container? Yes, I am. Let's put them both inside the Flex container. Okay, line them up side by each. And I'm still, I still can't get there. All right, so let's pull them back out again, or at least pull one of them back out. I'm still, yeah, I'm not going to be able to get there. No, actually, yeah, what am I thinking here? Of course I can. So we can go in here, go mobile. There we go. I was trying to clone it again. It's what I was trying to do in my brain. So this one here is mobile. So now on that, now we can come in here and give the mobile one some negative padding. So we'll give it -30 padding. That'll work. Now let's go back to our desktop. And so at this point, we need to find, where is that flex element? And can we get it in there? Come on, where are you? I don't know where it went to. So what we're going to have to do is, well, first off, let me save my page and let me reload it, because it almost looks like there's something missing in here. So let me reload this page once it's done saving. Okay, well, at this point here, there is the flex element is right down here, but it's so tiny we can't see it. So good thing that they have this layout up here, because we can come back down now into our row. And so here is the mobile row, or I'm sorry, the desktop row for the top part. So actually we're down to the next section is where we need to be. And we have our section right here. We have our mobile image right there. So here's our flex container. So what we need to do is come up here and grab a hold of this image, and we can pull it down and drop it inside of that flex container. Oops, I missed it. So let's pull this down one more. There we go. Now I managed to get that back inside of that flex container. And so now what we can do is we can take our subheadline and we can pull that back down into here as well. Now we're back to our original. So now we have obviously the image on the left, the text on the right. We have, for the flex container in general, we have the flex direction going this way because we are now on desktop, and that's why desktop here is highlighted. But then if we go into the mobile version, now we're going to have, we got these two images in here because I forgot to change this image here. We need to turn that on. We need to go to desktop only. So that one's desktop only now. So now we go back in here, and here we go. So what happened here is let's come in here. We were messing around with this. And so what we want is this apparently to be opposite direction, because I must have put them in there in the wrong order. Let me just make sure that still looks okay. It does. And you notice here when I went up to the top and I changed it from desktop to mobile, these two changed, because you can change it right here. So you can go directly back and forth inside of this element. So now this is off to the side here. I like the fact that this came up some. We're off to the side here. So what I want to do is I want to center this one as well. So we're going to do what we just did before, is we are going to clone this, and the top one then we are going to make that desktop only. Then we will pop back into the mobile. This one here, we will make this one mobile only. And then we can also center it as well. And because it's down kind of low, let's just bring it up some, and then it'll be right underneath her. Pulls the bottom of the row up along with it, and so we have our white like that right there, and we can save that. And again, I would show it to you on a live view, but right now I can't get a single page to pull up, and I'm just praying that this thing is actually recording. So now the next part we're going to come down to here is, you see you got these icons and text, icons and text. Well, again, it's all smushed over to the left-hand side, and I'm not a big, huge fan of that. But what we can do in here is let's go back into our desktop. And one thing we could do is, you look at the image here, and the image is actually to the left-hand side. Same thing here. So let's just come into this image, and let's center it. There's no reason why this really shouldn't be centered. So let's center that, and then we will center this one as well. And so then when we go into our mobile view, now these images are centered. We didn't have to do anything else to them. Now the other text, though, I want to center that as well. So we could come in here on this, and we could say center, and and center right there. And okay, do you like that? Maybe not. Actually, I think it's probably better off to the left-hand side. So again, what we're going to have to do here, because we can't center it just on mobile, so there's no settings like there was in a Flexbox between desktop and mobile, we can't center it just on mobile. So again, in this case here, we're going to have to do the clone everything trick, and then this one here, we will center that, and then we will set that one, oops, let's go back, let's go in here, center that to, send that to mobile, and then this bottom one here, sometimes they're a little tricky to get to because they're just a little tricky to get to. And I found that when you click, when you're in mobile and you click at the end of that black box, let me see if I can get it to, that black box to come back up again. I found that when you click over here, it just kills it. So if you need to get into the sidebar, make sure you just hit the gear there. And so let me see there, that one was mobile only. And then this first one up top here, that one's going to be desktop only. And then this one here as well will be also desktop only. So there we got them still aligned to the left on desktop, and on mobile then we have them centered. And then the other thing with mobile is you can look at this and now say, okay, on mobile here, maybe I want to get this one up a little bit closer underneath launch, so we'll bring that down. But I want some more room underneath this one here, the lower text element. And sometimes a little tricky to get into these smaller ones. And so there we can come in and we can say padding bottom, and let's move that down. So we got, let's just make it 20 pixels of padding on the bottom to give that a little bit more space like that. Because again, when people are scrolling on their phones, they're used to going up and down at a great rate of speed, whereas on a desktop device, they're really not used to that. So now the next section here, let's go back into our next section here. Here we got some text at the top, and then we have this picture of this young lady here, and then some text, and then we go down the next line and we have text, and we have the image. Well, so we have image, text, text, image, and I refer to this generally as just serpentining or serpentine pattern on your page, and just go back and forth, and flip-flop them as you go. Well, what happens when you go into mobile then is these just stack on top of each other. So in mobile, natively what it wants to do is it wants to go image, text, text, image. Well, what you want is image, text, image, text. So let's go into this and let's see how this is lined up. And that's exactly what we got here was image, text, text, image. So we need to put this gal up above this text up here. So there are multiple ways of doing this. Now, if I were building this, I would build this box in Flex. So I'd build a Flex container. I put 2 Flex containers inside. I give one the image. I give one all the rest of the text. And then all I'd say is on mobile, instead of lining them up the normal way, the default way, which is the row from left to right, I would say let's stack them on top of each other. And the second set of Flex boxes at the bottom, I'd say flip that over, do reverse column, and then it would put the image on top of the text. Well, that's a harder way to do it. Another way to do it is you can come in here, you can just clone this entire row, and you could take the image on the original, let's say we leave that at desktop. The cloned one, we make that mobile, and the one on mobile, then you take the image and you move it over to the left side, and you take the text and you move it to the right hand side, and then when it displays on mobile, it will stack properly. A third way to do it, which is actually the simplest way to do it, is we're just going to clone this image here. We're going to grab this, we're going to put it above the text right here, and we're going to say this image, we want that to be desktop. And this image here, we want this one to be mobile. So now we come in here, we got image, text, but we have a problem here with spacing. But the nice thing again is we don't have to then clone this element and have it get pushed down some. We can actually go into this image because we can put in, I hope, yes we can put in bottom padding. So let's just say we want 30 pixels of bottom padding to push that down. And of course, at that point, you would save it. You would check it on a live page and see what it looks like, make sure it looks good, and check it at different viewport widths. And that's one thing I guess I didn't mention going into this here is when you're building, when you're testing, you have to check different viewport widths. So generally speaking, you might want to use the dev tools in Chrome and be able to go into the mobile responsive mode. Again, today, I really can't. Well, I can show you that. Let me just show you that inside of the editor very quickly. You come in here, what I did is I just Shift Command C. That's the simplest way to get in here. Let's close this up. And then you can see this now is in, well, let me put this into desktop view first, and now we can put it into mobile view. So now it's saying the browser is too small because I shouldn't be doing this inside of the editor, so just pretend it is working right here if I were on a live page. So you can do it that way if you would like. Another way, a really simple way to do this, is when you are building, check to see how wide the frame is that you're building in, because your average laptop is, your average laptop is somewhere probably between 1200 and 1600 pixels. Some of the older ones, especially now, I know there's some with the Retina displays now that are probably 3000 pixels, even on a laptop. On my computer here, I'm not quite sure how wide I am right now, but what I can do is I can grab a hold of the side of this, and if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, you're going to see those numbers moving down there. And it's telling me that I've been building this whole thing at over 2,000 pixels. And what that is that's an extension that is in Chrome, and it's called viewport dimensions. So you can always tell how wide the viewport is by putting that little bug in there. Now, another thing you can do, if you say, okay, well, I want to be building at, let's just say 1400 pixels, one thing you can do is increase the size. And as you see here, as you go to the bottom right here, now that's up to 1412 pixels. And so we can move this back and forth at 1400. That may be a little bit too much. Now we're at 1693. We can pull that size down a little bit, closer to 1600. And so you got to kind of play around with those things and see, okay, where do I want to be as far as building this thing, and then test it as you go along to make sure everything is looking good as best as possible in all the different viewport widths. Because, you know, like I said, you could have a screen that's got 4,000 pixels on it. You can have an iPad that's got 1024. The breakpoint for mobile for ClickFunnels is 770 pixels, but if somebody takes their phone and goes landscape with it, you can have anywhere from 500 to 1,000 pixels in width if they go that direction. So there's so many different devices. You just have to kind of build for the best fit that you can possibly have on all of the devices. And no matter what, things aren't always going to look perfect. And so basically don't try to be perfect. So let me see here. We looked at these images down here and how nicely they lined up. But there's one other thing I noticed in here. You got 3 different places where you see this. You got this word to back here. You got 1, 2, and then down here on the bottom you have Y. Okay, so let's just focus on this one down here. So let's do this. We're going to come into this this text element. And at first when I saw this, I thought, okay, well, it's got to be a background image. So I'm looking everywhere trying to find a background image, even inspected the page, inspected the code. I couldn't find a background image. Finally, I was just like, oh, holy cow, that's a text. That's just a text element. And whoever thought of this, I'm sorry, they're just a genius. I was just like, holy cow, never even thought of that. So as you come down here, I forget where exactly it was, minus 60, I think. Actually, it was probably more than that, more like minus 90, I think is where it started. So they just did a text element in the background here with a very light gray color. So we just come here and look at the color, and it looks like it's transparent, and it's because it is almost transparent. It is black, but it's only 5% opacity. So if I move this over, obviously we can bring it up to 100%, and now it is pure black. But so we bring it down to 5%, and it has a very light grayed out color. Then they took this other element right here, and they just jammed it all up in there. And that's good. It's cool effect on desktop, but they didn't compensate for it on mobile. So let's go down to this one here. Right in here is the word Y. You see the word Y jammed in behind there. So what are we going to do to fix that? Because on mobile, we would like that to be out front and proud. So let's do this. We're going to first off push this one out of the way, and then we're going to come into this element right there. And let's just try this here. I'm not quite sure what's going to work yet. We'll have to play around with it a little bit, because first off, it's way too small. So we want to, let's just change this to pixels, make it a little easier to, in our brains, work with. At least we're used to working in pixels. So let's make that then 60 pixels, and it made it a whole bunch bigger. And then let's come back up here, and we're going to move this back down to, oops, that's not what I wanted. Oh shoot, what was it set at originally? Well, we'll just set it at 0, and we'll come back in to this element now. This one was set at -90. So let's bring this back down, and we're going to make that -65, just because I think I messed up the word in the background before that. But now let's see, how's this going to look on desktop now that we did that? And so now we got to scroll back up, and we're down a little bit low on the desktop, because again, this one started off as -90. So to get that to line up perfectly, what are we going to have to do, of course, is we're going to have to duplicate this again. We'll make this one here desktop only, and we will set this one to -90. And then this element here, we're going to set this to our mobile. And where are we? We're below these ladies, I think. And then on this one here, I think we were at like -65. So we'll put that in at -65. And then now we have the word proud of the text below it once again. And again, in here, you can come in if you want to clone these and center them. And you can center these other ones up here now that we already have them cloned. And we could do all that. But otherwise, I think we've gone through just about all of the modifications we needed to do in here in order to get this looking good on mobile. So that is it for this training today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Have a great day.